Hello. This is my re-review of the Eastman 632. Firstly, I want to apologize to Matt Walters and Chuck Kerrigan for my my complete disservice of a review that I had posted before this, and I felt like it well needed a redo because the information I had in that video was definitely wrong in some places. But I do feel like some things I mentioned about the tuba are still definitely worth mentioning, and I hope that they get fixed because where it stands, what this instrument is designed for, and what I've learned, I've been wrong about what its intentions are for. When using the proper application, this is a good instrument, especially for the price. So, this is the Eastman 632. It is a CC tuba in 4/4 size. It has a bore of 0.689 inches. It has a 19 3/4 inch bell, and it has 4 front action pistons, a 5th rotary valve, and it comes in a very good case. I'm going to start with all the good things and mention where I was wrong before I get to the stuff that I still think needs fixing, if I can. This instrument is not an orchestral instrument, as I was led to believe. That's completely my fault for believing that. I shouldn't have believed that, but I did. This instrument is set up similarly to an orchestral instrument where you have your 4 pistons and you have your 5th rotary valve and you have your slides that are lapped and vented, and it certainly is set up like a lot of orchestral C tubas at first glance. And honestly, in a pinch, you could use it as an orchestral instrument in a very small orchestra, but this instrument is more suited for the brass quintet scene or the small ensemble piece. It's suited for the stuff like that. It'd be a good instrument for like studio recording where you don't need to have a huge sound, because this thing has a lot of dynamic potential. It's able to play very tonally dramatically. Like it has a very capable ability of playing very soft and having a very soft round tone, but then 2 seconds later, without having to put nearly as much effort as you would need to into a lot of other tubas, you can get the most, like, strained sound that you kind of get whenever you go fortissimo on a smaller instrument. But in a lot of instruments, the tone becomes uncomfortable in that regard. But this instrument stays mostly comfortable. Of course, you can overblow this instrument. You can overblow any instrument if you try hard enough. This instrument will certainly overblow much quicker than larger instruments with larger bores, but for the application this is made for, that I think that's acceptable, and I think it does what it's trying to do well, and it's a all-round kind of good, just recording small ensemble gig tuba that doesn't need to be everything. Whenever I used this instrument in performances, I never really used it in large performances, which I shouldn't have, because it's not what it's really made for. Large wind ensembles, and it's not really designed for that. I used a Miraphone 187 for that because it was just better, and I had it at the time, and I'm glad I did. But what I did use this for was small ensembles, experimental ensembles, for the purpose of recreational teaching for students. And this instrument was great for that because I was the only tuba in the ensemble, and there were maybe 15 other people besides me, and they weren't all, it wasn't super loud or super demanding music or anything. Not that would have mattered. It would have been just as fine. And every time I rehearsed with this instrument, I was thinking that I wasn't being enough volume wise, but every rehearsal I was told to lower my volume, and rehearsals weren't it wasn't a bunch of them, but it makes me realize now that this instrument is a lot more efficient as well than I realized. This instrument, to me, from what I'm used to with other instruments, feels like a drag to play. But I know now that it is very efficient at producing sound in a way that I didn't realize. It's got a very broad sound, and I'm not used to that with tubas. I'm used to the rotary valve Kaiser type tuba, the smaller bell, but the big, but projected directional, almost German type tuba sound that you find with like a Meinl Weston or a Miraphone, of the type that I just mentioned. This is more of a York style tuba. It has a big 19 3/4 inch bell, if I remember correctly, and it has piston valves and it has a smaller bore. I've played on rotary instruments pretty much my entire career of learning the tuba, and I started off on a 3-valve Dynasty piston upright 3/4 tuba before I switched to a rotary tuba a few months after that. And the difference between a tuba like that to this is just, it takes a different mindset to appreciate what this is and what it's trying to do. And I mean, if you're trying to do recording or anything, I think this is a really good brass quintet instrument, and I think it's a great one. I think I was gonna originally compare this to the Wessex Wyvern, because it's a very staple C tuba, but these instruments have very different purposes, and it's not really fair to compare them. And while I do think a lot of people might find the Wyvern more versatile and find it a better instrument for them, it's not going to do what this does as well as efficiently. I think that the Wyvern might not be as good as a recording tuba as this. I feel like the Wyvern's probably a little too big for quintet usage and small ensemble usage and other similar use applications. I feel like the Wyvern might be a little better at orchestral use in a mid-small orchestra. But I mean, as far as things about this instrument I like, pretty much everything that I disliked about the instrument that wasn't a constructional failure, as far as the fifth valve is concerned, I'll get to that in a minute in the slides, I've come to like about this instrument, and it makes me appreciate it a lot more. Something else I got wrong in my review was that I made the assumption that these bows were not hand hammered. I made that assumption because for the price, I just did not think that existed. Hand-hammered sheet brass bows, I didn't think existed in an instrument in a $7,000 price range. I didn't think that lapped slides, vented valves as well. I mean, there are issues. But I'm surprised. I knew that the valves and slides were vented and lapped, but I didn't realize that these bows were hand hammered. And something that is noted to be with this tuba is because of that, because of the type and gauge of brass, as well as the fact that it's hand hammered, it's pretty light for what it is, in my opinion. I've handled a lot of tubas the same size heavier than it. As far as to the exact weight, I have it pulled up here. I think, no, it's not on the website. Anyways, it's certainly not a heavy tuba for its size, but it's also fragile. I tend to baby any instrument that I take care of, whether it's mine or whether it's a school's like this one is. I've just been the primary user of this for months now. And this instrument is just extremely hard to take care of. Of course, there's the slide lacquer. There's the lacquer on the slides that's worn off, if you can see that. I don't know. It's kind of hard to pick up. You can kind of see it. That's fine, honestly. I think if I was going to do it differently, I'd want a higher quality lacquer. But for what this is trying to do, it really doesn't matter. You can pretty much always get brass components re-lacquered if you really need to. I'm a raw brass person. I would just rather a raw brass version of this instrument anyways. So I don't know why I made a comment about that last time because it's what lacquer does. It wears off over time. I mean, unless you're Miraphone and you've just cracked the code to indestructible lacquer, it's just kind of a quality of it. As far as other things go, I mean, it's in the thumb ring and on the thumb paddle actually, for the trigger itself, for the fifth valve, hasn't worn off, but the thumb ring has worn off a little bit. The valves are mostly good. I've seen other people have problems where they had to get their first valve relapped. This one's kind of in between. The first valve is really the only valve that has an issue with sticking sometimes, and it doesn't matter what kind of oil you use. I've used a spectrum of a combination and individual assortment of oils. That's not a great way to word that. I've used individual oils and light viscosity to very light, heavy viscosity, and I've tried mixing different oils from Hetman to other brands. I'm trying to remember all of them. I just don't. It's not a huge issue. It's not the kind of stick where it'll just get stuck down completely. It's just the kind where, like, you just touch it again and it comes undone. It's like the mildly annoying kind. I don't know what's causing that specifically. I don't know if they just didn't lap the valve enough whenever they were assembling this instrument, but that is about it. I mean, it's not a deal breaker, honestly, and if you ever had that problem, you could probably contact Eastman, and if it's a genuine problem with the instrument, I'm sure they'd be happy to assist you with it, because they're definitely a good company. As far as other things go, I mean, the valves they're great. They're vented. The fifth valve is another issue, in my opinion. So the issue with the fifth valve is that the actual point from which the thumb ring is mounted on, which is this rod right here, which goes down to this tube right here. It's kind of hard to see, but you can see the thumb ring attaches right there. This flexes while playing, and it's hard to see on camera because the whole thing is moving when I move it. And the point from which the fifth valve lever is held on, which is kind of hard to see in there. It's this thing right here. That point also flexes. So whenever you use whenever you have your thumb in the whenever you have your thumb in the thumb ring and you actuate the trigger in normal use, you're pushing the thumb ring this way, and you're pushing the standoff for the trigger this way, and the whole mechanism flexes. And I was on TubeNet like relatively recently, a few months ago, and I saw one or two of these instruments that had to be rebraced because they broke off because it was flexing too much. And I feel like that is a structural issue. Another thing is that the valve linkage, let's hope this can go in frame, back here, there we go. So there's a mini ball on the valve rotor head, and then there's a mini ball on the man, I'm struggling today, on the actual lever itself. One of those was not screwed on an extra 180 degrees. So because of that, there was play on the actual threaded rod that connects the two mini balls to the things that they're connected to do the function. So because of that, you get a clicking sound whenever they move in and out. Doesn't mean that it's going to come off or that it's going to be structurally sound. I mean, I probably would be a little more structurally sound to have it screwed on all the way. Point is, it would make a clicking sound whenever you use the valve, and all I had to do was take out the valve assembly with the linkage still attached and rotate it 180 degrees. I know that would probably scare some people, like you could probably snap a screw off or you could bust a thread or something, but it felt like it did not strain at all for me to just rotate that valve another 360 degrees, mind you, and put it back in. So it was, well, they're just assembling these things. I don't want to say wrong, but they're not assembling them to the point to where it's well toleranced. I don't understand if there's an issue with that would keep them from wanting to do that. I doubt that it would wear out the mini boss faster or anything, but I feel like if you want a quiet valve, you just gotta assemble the components all the way on. I doubt there's actually anything wrong with assembling it on all the way, but maybe there was a flaw in the manufacturing process that they didn't realize, and it just caused that. I don't know. Regardless, the valve will still function, at least for a while, with these weak post standoffs, and it'll continue to play. The rotary valve has never stuck once. It's not the fastest, but it works. It's not the quickest, but it's smooth, and that's honestly the most important part. This instrument also has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 slides on it, and for me, whenever it came in, all of those slides were out of alignment, and pretty significantly. They were all extremely stiff or almost stuck in place. This was bought from a certified retailer in Massachusetts by my college, the University of Louisiana Monroe, and I had to realign them, and for me it wasn't a huge deal, but I really, it makes me upset to see that, because that's the kind of thing that you just don't want to see on a brand new instrument. Like the slides, and this instrument was brand new, but it could have been the certified retailer's fault. It could have been the shipping method's fault. I don't know how, because it's in such a good case. I don't know how that could work. The case itself is one of those metal body hard shell cases that have that black coating on the outside of it, and they smell really nice and chemical on the inside with the black foam. They're pretty common cases, and it's made to fit this tuba specifically, and it's really nice. I don't know how it could have gotten damaged in shipping. Maybe someone at the store that this was at damaged the instrument by messing with it, and they managed to get all of the slides significantly out of alignment. Regardless, it could have been still Eastman's fault. I don't want to put the blame on anyone, because my guess is as good as theirs probably for what it is. The only thing that can be done is that hopefully, if anyone else experiences this, they'll speak up about it, and then the actual problem can be found and solved. Because if it's being damaged in the case, then improvements could be made to make sure that it doesn't get damaged in the case. But I don't know. I'm not going to speak on it anymore, because I don't have the reason to. And I'm not the greatest player, obviously. I'm going to school to learn tuba for a reason. But I'll play you the Snyder 4, and I'll play you Bach's Little, the beginning of Bach's Little Fugue on this instrument, just so you can get an idea of how it sounds, if you can, through the camera. And I mean, that's a sum of the mid and low register. The instrument does have a good high register, and I will give it that for sure. I'll just play a G scale. Good things more to mention about this tuba that I had forgotten about until I said that is that this instrument, because I've been using this instrument as my primary instrument for the past few weeks because I got a new tuba. But the registers across this instrument are very good and they're very consistent. If I was to knock it anywhere, it would be like the transition from low D flat to C. Very different tonally, but that's to be expected on an instrument this size with this size bore. This instrument has a very vocalistic, is that even a word? It has a very vocal like register in the upper register, and I was actually considering using this instrument for my violin concerto that I'm going to be performing. I'm going to be doing the violin concerto by Bach, BWV 1041, for my freshman recital at ULM. But this instrument, I mean, honestly, it has the upper register and agility of a good F tuba. If you treat it right, it plays well. It takes a bit of precision to not split notes, but playing in the upper register is by no means a struggle. The instrument is overall very easy to play. I like that a lot. The instrument is pretty nimble. As long as you're not playing in the contrabass register, like low E down to D flat, those registers are very hard to articulate an instrument like this, but this instrument isn't designed to do that, so it's really not fair to give it crap for that. And then, other than that, this instrument has the best pedal register as far as being able to just recreate tones of any tuba probably I've ever played. This instrument's a lot more efficient at producing sound and playing notes than I thought. It takes a little more pressure behind the air, and I think that this instrument is probably not the best instrument to own as your only instrument if possible. I think that if you were to have a rotary B-flat tuba, and then this, it would be good because I'm playing this instrument for a long time. I don't know if this would transfer to any professional in the professional world because I'm just a student and I'm susceptible to more, bad habits. This instrument kind of led me to not have the same power and support behind my airstream. But this instrument does take a little more force behind their air to play loudly, at least. And I feel like it's kind of inevitable to not talk about that because you have to play loudly sometimes. And this instrument is acceptable for what it is for sure. And I think that for what it's trying to do, you should not have a problem playing this thing. But I'd say make sure you definitely do breathing exercises with this instrument in particular. As far as anything else goes, I forgot to mention the lead pipe. It appears to be the kind to where you could have had the screw points here and here to remove the lead pipe, but it's still it's like a tuning slide that it's accepted into instead of soldered straight to the valve block. It seems to leak a little bit from there. It doesn't seem to affect the sound of the instrument that much. Other than that, honestly, this instrument is good to me, and I think that I gave it way too harsh a review, and I gave it way too much of an poorly informed review, and I think I should have changed a lot of things and researched a little bit more before I made that video. And yeah, my apologies for that video. It's just not, as someone put it whenever I posted that video, the tuba community and the music community isn't that great, isn't that large to begin with, and misinformation specifically, spreads around a lot more than you would think, and it affects people's opinions, and it affects the businesses as well. And I definitely don't want to do that. I want to give this the credit that it deserves, and I took down that last video for a reason. Anyways, hopefully some can come to forgive me for my ignorant and poor actions that I should not have made about this tuba and its review. I would honestly recommend this to anyone that needs a brass quintet horn for sure. This instrument is great for that. If you're doing almost all studio work in a recording studio, this is a great instrument for that. I'd recommend it, especially for the cost. I mean, there's just not anything comparable to this for the cost, in my opinion. And then, as far as playing in small ensembles, especially if you're maybe like a chamber, brass chamber group, or a brass ensemble where you don't need a huge instrument, this is going to work very well. You can obviously use other instruments. There's nothing stopping you. But I feel like for what this is designed for, if you have it, you're going to be doing your job significantly more efficiently. And thank you for watching this review. And I hope this better informs you about the Eastman 632. Thank you for watching.